Tonight, Air Canada flight attendants are adamant they are not going back to work even after the strike was deemed illegal.
If it means folks like me going to jail, then so be it.
Hundreds of flights canceled, 500,000 travelers grounded.
The service for passengers has been disgraceful.
So what happens now? We break down how the strike could end. Breaking tonight, CBC News projects Pierre Poilievre will win a by-election in Alberta.
Thank you very much to the great people of Battle River Crowfoot.
The Conservative leader will be heading back to the House. And a much warmer White House welcome for Ukraine's president.
Thank you very much for being here.
This time, he brought backup.
I have a feeling you and President Putin are going to work something out.
As Donald Trump presses for a quick deal to end the war.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. Air Canada flight attendants remain on strike as travelers brace for yet another day of cancellations. But word from the union late tonight, the two sides are talking again. A deadline came and went today for the union to make its members leave the picket lines. Ottawa is urging a deal and fast, but Air Canada says that won't happen unless workers are back on the job. Caught in the middle, 500,000 passengers. It is rare for a union to ignore a back-to-work order, leaving both sides in a standoff. Jennifer LaGrassa looks at what could happen now.
Don't delay, get there, hey!
They're not backing down. 10,000 Air Canada flight attendants are staying on the picket lines, defying a back-to-work order.
We will not turn our back on these workers.
Canada's Labour Relations Board called the strike unlawful and told workers to be back at noon Monday, but the union refused.
If it means folks like me going to jail, then so be it. If it means our union being fined, then so be it. We're looking for a solution here, but that solution has to be found at a bargaining table.
Negotiations stalled Friday, and since then, hundreds of flights have been canceled, with more expected Tuesday. The airline now estimates 500,000 customers will be affected.
My message is obey the law, and let's get our flight attendants back to on the planes.
The union is demanding better wages and compensation for unpaid work. Right now, attendants aren't paid for their duties before and after flights. Air Canada says its latest offer would make its staff the best paid flight attendants in the country.
It's important that they're compensated equitably at all times, fairly at all times.
The federal jobs minister says the government will investigate claims of unpaid work. It's an issue other federal parties have raised before. The minister also defended the decision to invoke a controversial back-to-work order.
With both parties saying there's no further room to negotiate, it was clear that they needed an assisted tool.
But some experts say Ottawa overstepped, threatening workers' rights.
The leverage that employers have in that bargaining relationship is that, of course, they control most of the things about employment. But if we remove that right, as has been happening in these conflicts lately, it completely removes workers' leverage and removes any pressure from employers to have to bargain.
So we're hearing from the union that it will meet with Air Canada and a mediator tonight. Right now, Air Canada has canceled flights through Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And once these flight attendants do eventually get back to work, what we're hearing is that it's going to take 10 days for the airline to get back to normal.
And Jennifer, what could happen next here if the two sides don't come back to the table?
So one expert tells me that the government could look to get an injunction. That would mean removing these picketers here. It could also get a contempt order against the union, which could mean jail time for the leader. Air Canada right now says that there won't be a deal with flight attendants unless flights resume. Adrian.
All right, Jennifer LaGrassa at Pearson Airport tonight. For stranded travelers, the anxiety and uncertainty are only growing. Jayla Bernstein shows us what they're facing and the extra costs that just keep adding up.
With hundreds of flights canceled and hundreds of thousands of travelers affected, frustration with Air Canada is boiling over.
They weren't able to find any flights on over 160 different carriers.
It's a lot for people that can't just fork over the money.
Air Canada's ticket refunds don't come close to covering the true cost, says this traveler.
All of us are out a lot of money with cancellations of hotels, ferries, rent-a-cars, nights in hotels. Who reimburses you for all the rest of the money? And then also who reimburses you for the heartache?
Months of planning went into their trip to Athens, but the strike means several family members had to back out.
It doesn't feel like we are valued.
Stephen Phillips' flight home to Montreal was supposed to leave Monday.
The service for passengers has been disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful.
He's in England for a funeral. He says rebooking with another airline would cost about $15,000 for a one-way ticket.
I would never in my life fly Air Canada ever again. I would rather pay more money and fly with a competitor. It's disgusting.
But that's not always an option.
It's a well-known Canadian thing to say, I'm never flying Air Canada again. But it always has to come with the asterisk. There's no choice. This is why the Competition Bureau has advocated for allowing more foreign competition in our domestic routes.
The Public Interest Advocacy Centre says a strike is not considered within an airline's control, meaning that Air Canada is not on the hook to pay for extra costs around cancelled flights, while in Europe, consumer protections are stronger, something advocates hope will be up for discussion when Parliament resumes this fall. Jayla Bernstein, CBC News, Montreal.
With so many questions for travelers, where could things go from here? We'll try to get some clarity from a travel specialist and a former Air Canada executive a little later in the hour. Now to some breaking news out of Alberta. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is heading back to Parliament Hill. CBC News projects he will win the by-election in the riding of Battle River Crowfoot. Julia Wong is there tonight. Julia, can you give us a sense of the feeling in the riding?
Yeah, so Poilievre just finished speaking not too long ago, and there was a lot of excitement when he came in through this room, and that excitement continued as he spoke to the crowd. And of course, all this because he is projected to win this by-election here in Battle River Crowfoot. You know, it is a small but very enthusiastic crowd here that includes several Conservative MPs. We also saw Damien Kirk, and he spoke earlier today as well. He is the MP who stepped aside so Poilievre could run in this riding in the first place. Many people here have Canada First signs, and they're clutching Poilievre signs as well. And they cheered on as Poilievre talked about Conservative policies that he wants to see enacted, and in particular how he will hold Prime Minister Mark Carney to account. But he was also incredibly gracious to the people of Battle River Crowfoot. You know, this is the riding that is sending him back to House of Commons.
That epitomizes the great people of Battle River Crowfoot, for whom I am grateful that I will have the chance to be their humble servant, to fight every day and in every way for the people in this region who feed, power, and protect all of Canada.
So, Julia, I mean, we know Poilievre will have a seat in the House. It looks like his margin of victory will be substantial.
Yeah, that's right. You know, political science experts expected Poilievre to win handily, and that looks like it will be the case tonight. This riding has been Conservative. It's voted Conservative ever since it was established in 2015. Conservative candidates here have always won by at least 70%. And tonight it looks like that margin of victory for Poilievre will be along those same lines. Another thing that we heard from Poilievre throughout his speech was a theme of humility. It came up several times as he was speaking to the crowd here. He talked about how he learned many lessons from the people here in this riding in Battle River Crowfoot. Experiences that he says really resonated, and it appears that they really resonated with what he has gone through, including himself losing his Ottawa riding back in April.
They also reminded me that the road to success is never a straight line. And most of all, you should never give up in hard times.
So there are many people here who are lining up to take their photo with Poilievre. And again, Poilievre is projected to win the Battle River Crowfoot election. He will be going back to Ottawa, this time as leader of the official opposition.
All right. Thank you, Julia Wong. Donald Trump says a meeting is in the works tonight between Russia and Ukraine's presidents. This comes after a hastily arranged meeting at the White House with Volodymyr Zelenskyy and European leaders. Cam McIntosh shows us how the day unfolded.
U.S. President Donald Trump's aim was to get Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to the table, starting with a firm handshake outside the White House.
President Trump, sir, your message to the people of Ukraine as world leaders gather here today. We love them.
Inside, a stark contrast to Zelenskyy's last visit, when the Ukrainian president, in his familiar military clothes, was berated.
You don't have the cards.
This time,
Thank you very much for being here.
Zelenskyy, sitting in the same chair in a black suit, thanked Trump for his efforts publicly. After meeting privately, Zelenskyy said he's ready to negotiate.
Our people and all of us want to finish this war, stop Russia.
Now Trump says plans are for Zelenskyy and Russian President Vladimir Putin to meet. As the meeting unfolded, Trump called Putin, the Kremlin says, for 40 minutes.
There's no deal until there's a deal.
Last Friday, Putin convinced Trump a ceasefire is not workable. Trump says Putin wants land swaps, all of illegally annexed Crimea, and agreement Ukraine will not join NATO. Trump telling Zelenskyy Europe will provide NATO-like security guarantees with U.S. support, including weapons sales. Zelenskyy prepared to discuss it all.
Ukraine will never stop on the way to peace, and we are ready for any kind of formats, but on the level of leaders.
Also at the White House, European and NATO leaders backing Ukraine amid their own fears of Russian aggression.
Everybody around this table is in favor of peace.
A trilateral meeting seems the sensible next step.
Until then, aggression continues. This Russian drone strike Monday killing several. Trump says details like land swaps and prisoner exchanges would be up to Ukraine and Russia.
I have a feeling you and President Putin are going to work something out.
Now, where and when that meeting between Zelenskyy and Putin would happen is not clear, but if it's successful, it would likely lead to another meeting with Trump. The German chancellor says that should happen within 2 weeks.
Cam, just watching it, what a different tone at the White House for this visit.
Yeah, certainly. Zelenskyy didn't come alone, and he didn't come without a plan. He and the other European leaders presented Trump with a whole bunch of security proposals, including billions of dollars of spending on U.S. weapons. Now, Trump, for a very long time, has said he's the only person that can stop this war, and that should come with a Nobel Prize, no matter his motivations. Today, the other leaders in the room were very deferential, very cooperative, and were thanking Trump for his leadership.
All right, Cam McIntosh tonight in Washington after a whirlwind of a day. There is potential movement tonight on the war in the Middle East. Hamas has reportedly agreed to a proposed ceasefire with Israel, but as Sasha Petrusik explains, it is not clear whether Israel will sign on.
As Israeli tanks prepare to occupy Gaza City, some Palestinians flee and others dig in, venting in a rare protest against Hamas. Those Hamas demands do not represent me, says Ahmed al-Banna. I want a life of peace. Hamas demands do seem to have softened as representatives met with Egyptian mediators in Cairo, reportedly agreeing to a previous U.S. proposal that would see 11 Israeli hostages freed, half of the living, in a staged release during a 60-day ceasefire. That's similar to demands Israel once said it accepted, but apparently no longer.
Hamas
is under atomic pressure, says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, implying that's why the group is compromising. Israel wants a deal that will remove Hamas, insisting on a new Gaza government that includes no current Palestinian leaders of any stripe. At the southern Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt, Egypt's foreign minister criticized Israel for blocking aid and refusing to make concessions.
The Israelis used to say that there is no Palestinian partner for peace. Now, unfortunately, there is no Israeli partner.
War's end seems frustratingly far on all sides, with many Israelis also demanding concessions from their leaders.
Put some pressure on everyone to get into an agreement.
as hundreds of thousands took to the streets over the weekend. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
Pakistan is bracing for more rain after another round of deadly flash floods this weekend. The search for those swept away continues in the country's northwest mountainous region. Residents who fled to higher ground are now scared to return home as more torrential downpours are expected. Over 600 people have been killed across Pakistan since monsoon season began in late June. And raging wildfires driven by some relentless heat are ravaging parts of Spain. At least 4 firefighters have been killed battling those flames. And almost 2,000 troops have been deployed to join the fight. Spain's heat wave has already lasted more than 2 weeks. Well, back here, the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador says he's hopeful the province has turned the corner in its fight against destructive wildfires after rain and a weekend of cooler temperatures. But as Karen Pauls reports, for those whose lives have been upended by the fires, the reprieve comes a little too late.
And we'll get married right in front of the pond.
Less than 2 weeks before their wedding day, Allison Noonan and Barry Slade are dealing with an unexpected venue change after their home burned in Newfoundland's largest wildfire.
It's a hard pill to swallow to think that it's completely gone.
The ceremony was supposed to be in their yard. They've spent months making decorations. Now it will be among these family cabins where 20 people and 24 animals have taken refuge.
Find a place to rent.
Where we're going to live and what the kids is going to, where are they going to attend school?
The Kingston fire is still raging out of control over nearly 100 square kilometers, though weekend rain and cooler temperatures have slowed its spread. Officials are notifying people whose homes have been lost, 100 and counting.
It's difficult to have those conversations when you can't even tell people what they've lost yet.
The federal government says there are 700 wildfires burning across the country, 68 of them out of control. There are crews and firefighting equipment in every province and territory, and Canada is being helped by 6 other countries.
In Nova Scotia, an out-of-control wildfire in the Annapolis Valley is growing quickly. Now up to 30 square kilometers, more than 100 homes have been evacuated.
It's almost like you're holding your breath or you can't fully relax or focus on what you're doing.
New Brunswick's largest fire was declared contained this morning, but 6 others are still out of control.
Now I can't wait to wear it. Working up to the wedding is nerve-wracking enough, and let alone losing your home.
But this bride and her groom are trying to stay positive.
It's going to be a fresh start for us, making new memories.
And they're confident they'll get through this together. Karen Pauls, CBC News, near Carbonear, Newfoundland.
In Los Angeles, a woman dubbed the Katamine Queen will plead guilty in the overdose death of Matthew Perry. Prosecutors say she illegally sold the ketamine that killed the actor. Perry was found dead in his home in October of 2023. She will plead guilty to 5 charges connected to the incident. Her trial was scheduled to begin next month. Well, new research out tonight is looking at the connection between early puberty and how infants are fed.
The worst outcomes were in the girls who had exclusive formula feeding.
Why they say the emphasis should be on helping moms, not judging them. Next. Plus, at BC's Okanagan Lake, the grand opening of a new passageway for fish.
3, 2, 1.
How salmon will travel nearly 1,000 kilometers inland from the ocean. And later, with wildfires forcing many from their homes in Newfoundland, some comfort from a furry friend.
I've been taking my dog Rusty, trying to make the evacuees a little bit more happier.
We're back in 2. Hurricane Erin is moving through the Caribbean with strength. It has already downed trees, knocked out power, and flooded several areas of Puerto Rico. Officials say Erin is expected to create some rough conditions for the U.S. East Coast, Atlantic Canada, and Bermuda in the coming days. Some islands off North Carolina's coast are being evacuated. Well, a new study suggests that babies who are exclusively breastfed are less likely to hit puberty early. But as Christine Birak explains, doctors stress emphasis should be on helping moms breastfeed and not on judging those who don't.
More kids are starting puberty younger than they used to. Now some researchers say baby formula and weight gain might be part of the reason why.
The worst outcomes were in the girls who had exclusive formula feeding.
A large study done in South Korea involving over 320,000 children found during the first 4 to 6 months of life, breastfeeding was associated with a reduced risk of early onset puberty in boys and girls. Children who received a mix of breast milk and formula showed a slightly higher risk. However, formula-fed girls faced a 60% increased likelihood of early puberty. Boys saw a 16% increase.
A lot of data now is supporting early and longer-term breastfeeding is associated with less fat tissue.
More fat tissue could play a role in determining when puberty begins, but researchers still don't understand exactly how it works in the body. Puberty usually starts around age 8 to 13 for girls and 9 to 14 for boys. Close to or before that age is considered early puberty. Doctors say early puberty can affect kids' social, emotional, and long-term health, including cancer risk. The latest Canadian stats show 91% of parents start out breastfeeding. Less than half of them breastfeed exclusively for at least 6 months.
I tried hard, but it was hard for me.
Honestly, it was just about keeping him fed.
Doctors say the focus shouldn't be on adding more pressure on new moms.
Not breastfeeding your child is not a crime, and it doesn't mean inevitably that there will be problems. It's one factor.
Researchers say lactation support, flexible work schedules, and private spaces can make breastfeeding easier. Small shifts that can lead to lasting impacts on a child's health and development. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
It's been a historic day at Okanagan Lake in BC with a new passageway that will see salmon return for the first time in a century.
It's the last big major milestone to get fish back to their historical waters.
The Indigenous scientists who've been instrumental in bringing the fish back. Plus, Air Canada flight attendants continue to defy a back-to-work order.
If it means folks like me going to jail, then so be it.
We'll get some expert insight into what could happen next and what it means for stranded passengers. And the shifting gender gap that has upended politics in Canada and around the world.
Young people are increasingly unhappy with where they sit in the world.
Why so many young men are moving to the right. The National breaks down the stories shaping our world. Next. Well, that is the fishing vessel Atlantic Treasure sinking overnight, about 300 kilometers off of Canada's east coast. Its crew pulled to safety from their life raft by a nearby ship of fishermen who heard their distress call. Officials credit good planning and safety training for the successful rescue. For close to a century, something has been missing from BC's Okanagan Lake, but now salmon can once again access their historical spawning habitat. As Brady Strachan explains, the return of the fish has spiritual value to the Indigenous people who live near the lake.
It's a moment of pride and deep cultural significance.
It's history in the making, and our salmon will return as it was thousands of years ago.
With the push of a button, members of the Syilx Okanagan Nation restore a migration route that's been blocked for nearly 100 years. In just a few weeks, thousands of sockeye salmon will swim through this fish passageway and around the dam that's kept them out of Okanagan Lake, their ancestral home.
It's extremely rewarding.
For project lead Zoe Ilfson, it's an emotional moment.
It's the last big major milestone to get fish back to their historical waters, to get these salmon back.
Just to get here, migrating salmon have a 1,200-kilometer journey, swimming upstream from the Pacific Ocean through the Columbia River system and past 9 hydroelectric dams before they reach their spawning grounds. construction of the dams blocked their migration for decades. But 20 years ago, the Syilx began to restore habitat and remove barriers. They built a hatchery, releasing millions of salmon fry each year into the river system.
It's a really amazing milestone.
Biologist Ryan Benson has been part of this work for more than a decade.
Just seeing everything come together on a day like today, it's, yeah, it makes it all worthwhile.
The return of sockeye salmon also brings an important food source.
My grandfather and I used to survive on salmon all winter long.
For many here, the connection is cultural and spiritual.
When the salmon are going to come back up here, the land is going to sing.
And now, with the gates open, the salmon are set to return, carrying food, culture, and renewal back to the Okanagan. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Penticton, British Columbia.
Now it's time to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world. In the last federal election, more young Canadian men embraced Canada's Conservatives than the Liberals.
It is a new phenomenon that we are seeing such a divide.
We'll break down what is behind the trend here and globally. But first,
We will not back down. We will stand side by side with these workers.
Air Canada Flight Attendants Union vowing to fight on as workers hold the picket line for a third day, despite the strike now deemed illegal and Ottawa ordering them back to work. So to help us make sense of what happens next with Air Canada, with the flight attendants, and with you, we have travel specialist Mark Greenwood and former Air Canada executive and now McGill University lecturer dealing with labor issues, John Graddick. So, gentlemen, we've been getting, as you can imagine, a lot of emails from very worried travelers, many of whom are stuck. They want to find ways to get where they need to go. Mark, what's the best thing they can do that's not going to crush them financially?
Well, hopefully they've booked with a travel agent, because if they booked with a travel agent, all they have to do is contact their agent and we've got their back. We have access to all the airlines' reservation systems, so we can very quickly check to see what might be available on other airlines to get them home if they're stranded.
Okay, I hear you with hopefully they booked, but I'm going to venture that quite a few people have booked on their own because it's significantly easier in this era to do that. And if you've done that, and now you're trying to book independently to get out of where you are because you just can't wait anymore, what are your chances of ever getting reimbursed by either Air Canada or insurance?
Well, Air Canada is responsible for getting you back to where you started your travel. It's part of the contract that you entered into with them when you booked your ticket. You can try pulling up your reservation on the Air Canada website or through the app and see if you're able to make any changes through there. Otherwise, unfortunately, you're going to have to try to get a hold of them on the phone.
Okay. John, I'm curious, in past labor disputes, is it your sense that eventually people do get reimbursed? And does it matter where you are stranded at the time?
Yeah, it does matter where you get stranded. If you're stranded in Canada for a domestic trip, the only obligation Air Canada has is really to offer you alternative transportation within 48 hours of your scheduled arrival. Any hotels or meals or anything else that might be involved while you wait for that flight is out of your own pocket. There is no possibility, there's nothing in the regulations that basically require Air Canada to cover those costs. If you are in Europe, however, different set of rules. The Europeans require that in the event of a cancellation, the carrier again has 48 hours to book you on a return flight. And if that flight does not meet your requirements, you can then go to your own resources, book a flight, pay for the hotels, it's out of your pocket. But once you come home, that claim, along with all the receipts that you have, are submitted to Air Canada, and Air Canada is obligated to repay you.
Okay, so that's only if you're in Europe, for example.
That's correct.
John, can you help us understand something about this particular situation? Flight attendants are furious about not being paid for the work they do when they are not in the air. We are getting a lot of questions from viewers about asking, for example, how is this even legal? How typical is this of the airline industry globally?
It is fairly typical. I think that this has been a tradition or a method of pay for flight attendants and pilots for a number of decades. So, and it was put in place because it was a simple way of reckoning the total workload for a flight attendant. They fixed the salary for the work inside the airplane and then bumped it up by 20 or 30% to reflect all the work that they do outside of the aircraft. So in their salaries they have today, there is a recognition, not in it's hidden in their salary, that work is being covered by their hourly rate. However, in the last 4 or 5 years, I think airlines have been pressured by a number of labor and government groups to basically make that expression of outside the aircraft work, to make it very overtly, shown to the flight attendants at a salary level that's somewhat less than what they would get in a cabin, but it does recognize very explicitly on their paycheck, this is the amount of work that we have assigned that's prior to your aircraft, and you're being paid accordingly.
Okay. It's pretty confusing. I think also confusing for the passengers again right now. Mark, going back to you one more time. I heard you when you said about hopefully they book through a travel agent, but the best thing they could do right now would be what?
Don't go to the airport. There's nothing that the staff at the airport can do for you. You're going to have to try to get through to Air Canada over the telephone to have them book alternative arrangements for you. Or that is the best piece of advice I'd give right now.
Okay. And John, we are in this very unusual situation where, the flight attendants have said, nope, we're not going back to work. In your experience, and I understand, this is rare, it's not unprecedented. What happens next in an impasse like this?
Well, like you said, this is not something that's an everyday occurrence. We have what I would call civil disobedience on the part of union members to return to work. Some have characterized this as being unlawful. Others have characterized it as being illegal, including the Canada Industrial Relations Board. The unions have a different opinion, that this is an infringement on their right to strike, that they have a Supreme Court decision that says, the employees have a right to strike and you can't take it away from them. So there is a legal tussle taking place, and that's where the airlines and where Air Canada and its flight attendants are having to deal with solving that problem through binding arbitration or negotiation.
Okay, it's still messy. All right, John Gradick, Mark Greenwood, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming up, when it comes to how they vote, there's a growing divide between young men and women.
I think they do feel very anxious about the scale and the speed at which change is happening.
Why young men are swinging conservative and how it's changing the political landscape. A new global gender divide is emerging, showing women and men are drifting further apart politically, with young men leaning more to conservative ideas, including right here in Canada.
Men feel that they've always been left out and derided and neglected by these exclusionary progressive campaigns, then they may want their own heroes.
In April, Jonathan Montpetit looked at the ideological gap. Now, what the post-election numbers reveal about the conservative political landscape.
I want to have my traditional values. I want to be able to be a man. I want to be able to be masculine.
The voices of a new generation of conservatives.
They continue to vote Liberal. They continue to elect a socialist government that takes our money, makes our decisions for us, and ruins our country.
They're young, male, and frustrated.
We're at a moment where men and women are moving in opposite directions.
A trend happening in some of the world's biggest democracies.
CBS News exit polling finds that the president-elect won white men under 30 by 7 percentage points.
In Germany.
The far-right AfD is the winner among young men, while a large number of young women chose the left party.
And in South Korea.
The frustration and anger of young men in this country, whether their opinion is right or wrong, is palpable.
In Canada, young men are now an integral part of Pierre Poilievre's base.
The extent to which the coalition has changed, I think, would be very shocking to people. It's very, very young.
Carney's not here for you. He's here to put Canada last.
Canadian politics has changed a lot in the last 4 years. Like, check this out.
In the 2021 federal election, polls suggested that about the same number of young men and young women voted for the Conservatives. But things were different in the last election. That's a 12-point gap. Pollster David Coletto says that gap is the new norm in Canadian politics.
Have you ever seen support this high for the Conservatives among young men?
Not in my career. It is a new phenomenon that we are seeing such a divide that the demographic most likely today to say they're going to vote Conservative in our polling are men under the age of 30. That is a complete change to at least what I'm going to say the last few decades of Canadian politics.
In the last 3 federal elections, voters under 30 were more likely to vote for either the Liberals or the NDP than for the Conservatives, which kind of fits with the stereotype of young people being more progressive. But around the time Pierre Poilievre became the Conservative leader, Gen Z men shifted their support to the party. Jeannie Roth was Poilievre's director of communications on his leadership campaign.
What's changed is as young people are increasingly unhappy with where they sit in the world because they don't own homes, because they haven't been able to start families, because they feel like when they take public transit it's unsafe. Increasingly those young voters are open to voting Conservative.
Boomers don't actually give a flying fudge about the future generations of Canada.
Adam Beattie is a Conservative influencer from the Vancouver area. He posts under the name Robin Skies on TikTok, where he has nearly 180,000 followers. Beattie voted for the NDP in his first federal election in 2015. But he eventually turned to the Conservatives because he felt they were more responsive to the anxieties of young men.
Why do you think conservatism now is appealing to young men in a way that maybe it hadn't before?
Because we're on the front line of all the crap that's going on.
Beattie says he moved out of downtown Vancouver because it was too expensive and because he was assaulted.
But having like a crazed person who's clearly high on something attack me, call the police and have the police look at me and say, there's nothing we can do about it. Yeah, that's a radicalizing experience. And the only people who are capable of living life without having to face that, frankly, are an older generation who live in, protected neighborhoods, who bought into those neighborhoods when those neighborhoods were inexpensive and who continue to be shielded from the reality that's going on that's being caused by these liberal policies and ideas.
We wanted to get a better understanding of when this gender gap began to emerge. So CBC News analyzed data from the Canadian Election Study, a comprehensive survey run by political scientists before and after elections.
The data suggests young men and women once had similar attitudes on questions about whether more should be done for women. But by 2015, their views began to diverge. The same goes for what should be done for racialized minorities. And recent polling by Abacus Data suggests that young men are more likely than young women to agree trans athletes should not be able to play on sports teams, and are more likely to believe there are no longer significant obstacles to women getting ahead. Coletto says young Canadians do agree on political and economic topics, like the importance of healthcare and childcare. It's on these cultural questions where young men lean Conservative.
I think they do feel very anxious about the scale and the speed at which change is happening, particularly in societal kind of power structures, right? Like, it may be awkward to say, but I think they feel that their place in society is weakening and is maybe not as relevant as it used to be, right? That the historic advantage that particularly white men have had in our society is been challenged.
Alice Evans is studying how that rapid change has led to a global gender gap.
I think there is a risk that progressive activism has made some men feel alienated.
Evans says young people began polarizing along gender lines when they started spending less and less time socializing in person and more time on social media.
Globally, coupling is down, socializing is down, fertility is down. And that's a totally new dynamic whereby men and women are not necessarily understanding each other's perspectives. So people are spending much more time alone, by themselves, single, and then in these online networks.
Jobs are being taken. The backlash to progressive politics has been stoked by online influencers known as the manosphere.
How long before we have an actual sex robot that can talk to you like that?
Probably not long. It's a corner of the internet where figures like Joe Rogan host hours-long podcasts that are popular with young men.
All this ridiculous woke shit with these rigid ideas of what you have to say and not say. It's like, none of that is liberal. None of that is really like open-minded or progressive. It's all just it's a cult.
Men may gravitate to guys like Trump or Elon Musk who are saying, hey, the cavalry is here. We're going to cheer for the boys. We're going to champion men's rights. We're going to put men center stage for a change. Because that's an affirming message. So if men feel that they've always been left out and derided and neglected by these exclusionary progressive campaigns, then they may want their own heroes.
Erin, fix my tire right on this screen. Poilievre often speaks in a language that resonates with young men.
This insane, woke, DEI obsession is driving people away.
Or like when he sits with Jordan Peterson.
Young people say, look, okay, I went through, I got an education, I work nonstop, and I have made the calculation that there is no mathematical path for me to own a house.
It's a strategy, I think, designed entirely to speak to that cohort, which is not a normal conservative audience. And so if Pierre Poilievre finds a way to get those young men out to vote, that's a constituency that could be decisive in him becoming prime minister.
Young men like Beatty.
The only reason why young people on the right are talking about all of this woke stuff is because people on the left are obsessed with it. They're constant, and it's like, I don't care. I want a job, I want a house, I want a family, I want safety.
Since Trump's return to the White House, public opinion in Canada has been in a state of extreme flux. So far, young men have stood by the Conservatives, but boomers have shifted their support back to the Liberals.
It's certainly true for any political leader trying to hold together a broad voting coalition that there are always going to be concerns about appealing to one component of that voting coalition over another. You know, Poilievre is talking about institutions being broken, and so if you feel defensive of institutions, which many older voters do, it's harder for that to resonate.
Don't get me wrong, Donald Trump's comments about 51st state and the tariffs, not good, okay? Huge L. But the idea that people, specifically of an older generation, might be willing to give a mandate to Mark Carney because essentially Donald Trump bruised their ego while their kids are struggling to pay rent and to buy a house and to afford the basics is frustrating, to say the least.
That was Jonathan Montpetit with that investigation. Next, wildfire evacuees in Newfoundland get a visit from a special friend.
When people are down and out, if you can help someone, sure, why not?
How Rusty gave them comfort in our moment. This cutie is Rusty the service dog. She has been taking hour-long drives with her owner to one of the sites available for wildfire evacuees in Newfoundland and Labrador. So now the evacuees are already going through so much, and we want to give them the privacy they deserve. So we're not going to show their faces, but we will show you Rusty and her owner and the compassion they've been bringing at this difficult time. And tonight, that's our moment.
I had some issues and I got a service dog, and I want to make other people feel what I feel. I've been taking my dog Rusty to Carbonera Academy, trying to make the evacuees a little bit more happier, basically. The people don't know whether they got their house gone or not, and that's bringing a lot of anxiety. Now, on the other side of the fence, people know that their houses are burned to the ground and they got nowhere to go. I met up with a lady, and she was cold. She was severe anxiety. She wasn't talking. So myself and Rusty started talking to her. As the interview went on, or the session went on, she couldn't stop talking. When people are down and out, if you can help someone, sure, why not? So it's actually making me feel where I'm supposed to be, make me feel good. So it's a win-win for both sides.
Hey, Darren, I know we're talking about Rusty, but that's an extraordinary thing to do. And she is extraordinary. Apparently, she will walk by a lot of people, but seems to have an innate understanding of stopping beside the person who precisely needs a lift. It's just one of those many special things that dogs can do. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.